For the first time in my life, I've transferred oil without making a mess on the floor, and it's not all running down here, and I didn't overfill a funnel. And you do it in a way, the completely opposite way to the way I just showed you. You want it tight, but not stupid tight. Cut my finger, not smart, but don't be fooled by these shorts. These are safety approved shorts, and they are, yeah, there's a redundant layer of XYZ, whatever. Good day, folks. It's DIY Guy 123 here, bringing another do-it-yourself video. Today I'm going to show you how to take this air compressor that was destined for the junk pile because the air pump component of it failed. Actually, there it is right there. The guy was throwing it out. He gave me this. I'm going to take this and make it into basically a commercial grade oil drain catch. And I've seen these online anywhere from $250 with just basically a plastic bucket with a long tube and a funnel, which don't look very sturdy to me, all the way up to $500 and even up as high as $1,000 for the fancier ones that are air pressure evacuated. Given this is itself an air tank, it makes perfect sense that I would use air pressure to empty this into a bucket. There are many design considerations that I've been thinking about, and you know what you may want to do is consider, well, what are all the holes that I have in the tank already? What are all the, and so if we get a better look, here are a couple right there, one there and one there, and different sizes. That's 1/2 inch, that's, I don't know what, maybe a 1/4 inch, I think. And so, I can reuse those threaded fittings. And then the same thing right here, big 1 1/4 inch fitting right there. I could reuse that. There's also the same as this, but on the very bottom, and I could reuse that. So what I want to do is do this project as cheaply as possible, and that involves the reuse of as many parts as possible. And so the first thing I'm going to do is reuse the air regulator that came on the original compressor. So this is a regulator, allows you to regulate the pressure down for a tool that you might connect to the original air compressor, like an air nailer or something like that. Well, in my case, I'm going to be cutting a hole and welding on the top of this. I'm not a professional welder, and so I wouldn't trust that tank to hold the regular rated air pressure, so I'm going to regulate it down to like 20 or 30 psi. That's because you only need 20 or 30 psi, or maybe even less than that, to pump the oil out. So I'm going to reuse the regulator, and then this fitting was on a tool I used to have, so I reused that. I had this cap from something else to plug, so and then there's this this nipple right here, and so basically this is going to be threaded into that hole. It threads up beautifully. If I Teflon tape it all, that should be good. The next part of the plan is using this 1/2 inch valve, and that is going to thread right onto here. And what I'm going to put into that T is my pressure, not pressure regulator, but like a blow-off valve. So I'm going to buy an adjustable blow-off valve so that I can set it at like 20 or 30. The next thing is, how do we get the oil in there? Well, so I want to be able to drill a hole in the top of this. Actually, I'll use a plasma cutter for it, and then weld this coupler on. It's a 1 inch coupler. Weld that on there, and then I've got a 1 inch nipple and a 1 inch valve, and then this 1 inch nipple here. And obviously this is not going to be welded here. I'm going to weld this to the tank surface. Normally that valve will be in the open state, and I'm going to have a tube that goes down the center of this that rises up, and then the funnel will be on top of it. Now when it comes to the draining of the tank, we've got a few more toys here. So I've got this, I think this is a 1 1/4 to 1/2 inch adapter, and then I've got a 1/2 inch nipple in there, and then a 1/2 inch T with a plug on it, and then of course I couldn't get a nipple this long, so I used 2 with a coupler and an elbow, and then it'd be nice to have a piece of threaded pipe like that, but didn't have it, so made it that length, and then a valve on the end, and then a hose barb on here. And so if you look at the bottom of the tank, it has a threaded fitting on there that this will go in. Basically, this pipe right here will be a stand pipe. And when I want to drain this tank, I'll open this valve and it will pump fluid out of a hose that's going to be from here and into a bucket, into a 20-liter pail. You know, you can avoid some of this complexity if you were willing to drain it from the bottom. I was told that, oh, if I put a valve on the end here, I could use gravity to drain it. I don't intend to do it that way, but I did put a plug there for whatever reason. I couldn't pressurize it and I need to use gravity feed. I can always pull that plug and put a valve there and drain it that way. So that's the basic plan. Now, one thing I've noticed, and the astute viewers may pick this up already, is if I line up this surface with the bottom edge of one of the wheels, you can see this piping sticks out too far. So the first thing I have to do is build up this foot further, and I've got a set of wheels, larger diameter wheels, off of an old lawnmower that was being junked, so I took them off. So before I even start with the piping, I'm going to be making it so that it's going to have clearance for the piping. So to do that, I need to gain 2 inches on this surface. So I took a piece of 2x4 and another piece of 1/2-inch plywood, just a couple of corners, a couple of square pieces, and screwed them on. So this is going to be screwed in there, and then I'm going to change the wheels out. I'm going to show you how to get this cap off. If you look carefully at it's hard if they're rusty, but if you look carefully at the cap, there are little spots that are crimped sort of on the cap. And anyway, there's one at the end of my fingernail. You see the shiny metal there. Then there's another one there, and those are the things that grip onto the shaft. You can see like the paint removed from a little line. That's from when I twisted it. So anyway, they're on there pretty good. You saw I had to use pliers to get it off. And then the new wheel, ironically enough, from a lawnmower fits on there pretty well, perfectly. I'd say any clearance is only because this is probably worn a fair amount. And so I've got a couple choices. I can just put the cap back on there and that will lock this wheel on, or I can drill it and put a washer on there and then a clip. And I think given the problem, if that wheel was to fall off, I don't want to take the chance on that, so I'm going to drill it and put a washer on there. A little bit of oil for the now that that's drilled through, I'm going to be able to put a big washer on like that, and then I'm going to be able to put my wheel on and another washer on like that. Be able to put one of these through it and hold it in. So I'm gonna just put a little grease on there and then we'll do that. Yeah, I had to grind a little bit off the inner edge of the lawnmower wheel for it to fit on there, but that's okay. Okay, wheel, nice and snug. Not going to come off. Bent my little clip up. Good to go. And through video editing magic, we're going to put the second wheel on in 3, 2, 1. Okay, wheel number 2 on. So now we've created enough clearance to put the bottom piping on. Now we're into the assembly phase of the drain for this drain. So when we want to empty this into a bucket, I'm into that phase now. I don't claim to be an expert. I'm not a plumber. I don't state that what I'm doing to wrap these with tape is the perfect way. If you have comments, I'd love to learn about how to do it properly, so feel free to tell me. And the only thing I know about Teflon tape is you don't need too much of it. A couple of wraps, that's about it. And you know you're going to drop it on the ground a bunch of times. That's what's supposed to happen with Teflon tape. And then the whole roll unrolls in your hand, well, on the floor. Okay, so that's this guy. And you do it in a way, the completely opposite way to the way I just showed you. So if I had left it like that, as I screw this in, it will unroll that tape. So that's the wrong way. That was just a test to see if you're paying attention. Okay, so the way you do it is you hold the tape, and the way you're going to thread the fitting into whatever you're going to screw it into, that's how you load the tape up onto it. Yeah, it really wasn't a test. I made a mistake there, but it's okay. We caught it. Okay, so you want it tight, but not stupid tight. Plumber would have been able to do this much easier than I did, but basically I have all the joints taped and threaded on. Not cranked on there, it's super tight, but hopefully snug enough. And I'll be pressure testing it anyway. I'll find out if there are any leaks. I wish that I had had a coupler that was another 1/2 inch longer, because I had a really hard time getting this part threaded on to that elbow down there. I had to take the handle off the valve, which that in itself is not a big deal, but even that I really had a hard time, and this was kind of flexed. So it'll be interesting to see. I don't think it'll leak, but we'll that is the bottom part all good. Cut my finger, not smart, but did. I can't just cut that perfect circle right there and drop it in, because I need to cut this tank and weld around the interface of the tank in this piece I'm putting in. So I have to remove this plate temporarily. So I'm cutting along the edges here and the edges here. Okay. Or marking it all the way around. Battery went dead, otherwise it would have captured all this. But pressurize the tank. I'm only doing this to pressure test it to see if my weld is faulty, if this thing is going to blow off, if the tank is going to split because somehow I've damaged the integrity of the tank somehow and it's going to have a catastrophic failure. I wasn't sure. So what I did was I took that tank and I put it right out the door, right down a hill, put an airline to it, and then I turned the airline on at 20 psi, at 30 psi, 40, 50. I worked it all the way up to 80 psi and let it sit there for about 2 hours. And it did leak because of the porosity of my weld, but there was no failure. There's no change in shape. The angle of this pipe stayed the same, which means the tank didn't shift at all. Or sorry, this fitting didn't shift at all. So I'm feeling very confident at 80 psi for an hour. I know that's not as high as the tank is rated for. I get all that. But remember, I'm going to be using this at 20 psi or probably less. At 80 psi, that's 4 times the expected max pressure. So now that we've got this installed, how do we rig up the funnel piece? Well, I've got this sink. It's a stainless steel sink I bought from basically a store that recycles building materials. Paid 20 bucks for it. It came with this basket strainer and this threaded pipe on here. And then I had a friend who knows a thing or two about soldering. He picked up a flange that basically goes from this threaded fitting, I don't know what that is, 1.5 inches, to a soldering coupler, and then a reducer from whatever that is, 1.5 inches, down to a 1/2 inch pipe. And then this is a coupler that goes from the soldered fitting onto a threaded fitting. And this is a piece of 1/2 inch pipe that it was threaded on one end so that this coupler would go on it. So all this stuff was soldered and then it was taped before being put on there. And the pipe is too long, by the way, I know that. One thing that I've got to do before I'm finished this project is grind the galvanized coating off right here, drill it, weld a nut on, and then put a 1/2 inch bolt through there so that I can tighten the bolt on the nut, which will press on this pipe. And that way I can set the height of this by locking it on there. All right, so on my top support pipe, I drilled a hole and I've got space for my 3/8 bolt to go through, and I've got a nut on there. I'm just going to put that up like that and weld that nut onto that galvanized pipe. This bolt was just like a 5-inch bolt I put in a vise and pounded over, so it's L-shaped. So now I have my handle. So I'll be welding that on. So you can see that I've got this nut welded on here, and I chased the thread of the nut, and then I chased the thread on this bolt right here. And so it's a one-finger affair to attaching this threaded piece right here to the bottom of that strainer basket. And I'm going to snug that up with a wrench. Okay, so yeah, this is obviously way too high. All right, so I've got that end supported. Not very well, but good enough. There we go. There's a burr now from here. I'm going to deburr it on the outside and on the inside so that, you know, if anything ever went down the drain, it's not going to fetch up on a burr right there. And also so that when it goes up and down, it won't damage the inside of that ball valve. Okay, so here we are, first day trying out this new oil drain can. We've got a vehicle up on the hoist, and the funnel is basically underneath the bottom of the engine, and my assistant is going to remove the drain plug, and we'll see if it catches the oil here. And even if you drop that, it's nothing bad. Yeah, go ahead. Even if you drop that plug, it'll just won't get it in the bottom of the sink. Hooray! Look at that. Let's see if it leaks. We'll find out in the morning. Big black puddle on the ground. Awesome. No splashing. See that? First oil change done without splashing everywhere. Okay, so I've been waiting to finish the footage for this video for a while now, because I made this tool several months ago and I've used it several times. So the tank is, it's not full, but it's a third full maybe, and I just want to show you the drain process. And that's kind of the beauty of it, is I wanted something that was easy to catch the oil from the vehicle, but also something easy to get rid of the oil when I'm done. So you remember this hose right here? I made a little, just 1/2-inch copper pipe. There's a 3-inch piece, and then a 5-inch piece, and then a 6-inch piece. So that just sits down in the bucket. Just raise this up out of the way. So there, it's short now. I don't need to take it and throw it on the ground, remove it, because this is usually, if the container's full, there'll be oil, you know, like a dipstick, it'll be draining there. So I'll just lock it there. It's only down a bit this far. And then I have to close this valve, and that's so that air pressure won't release out of there. And then the air vent that I have, I'm going to close. Actually, I'll leave that open for the time being. And I'll hook this on. So now I have pressurized air, but nothing's going in the tank because the regulator, which you can't see from your camera angle, is set to off. And then I've got this valve right here. I'm going to turn that on. That will allow fluid to flow from the bottom up here. And then I'll just gently up. So as soon as I rotate the regulator, I get air pressure here. So I'll block that off, and now air pressure is building in the tank, and you can see the level of oil rising. You see it staying in the tank there. You don't need big air pressure for this. In fact, I kind of want only a few PSI. I don't really know how many, but 10 maybe. Just because if anything let go, I don't want this to all of a sudden be a big explosion of oil everywhere. When you hear it start to slow down, oil not you know, flowing as quickly as you want, maybe because it's cold or something, you can just give the regulator another turn like that and increase it. But that's flowing pretty well there now. I could definitely go faster, but so let's do that. Now, I've stopped the air, but you'll see that that's still flowing. So if I didn't have this shut-off valve here, that is going to make a mess. So I'm going to be ready to shut this off down by my right hand. That's enough. So shut that valve off. Now there's still a little bit of air pressure in the tank. And all the valves are shut. I don't think I have any leaks, but there's no need to keep that pressurized. And if there was a small leak somewhere and I came back in a week, there'd be oil maybe on the floor. So I'm going to relieve the pressure here. Open this valve. Now I'm going to restore this to the storage position. And what's happening here? And give that a sec to drain itself out here. Okay, because this is just U-shaped, just hangs on there. Now I've got a cap. And for the first time in my life, I've transferred oil without making a mess on the floor, and it's not all running down here, and I didn't overfill a funnel, which is what I always used to do. That concludes the video. Good luck with your do-it-yourself projects. If you like my